There we go.
There we go.
Just touch it.
Good job.
Too easy.
So I was just saying, it's, this has been a year or so of discussion and debate. And at the end of the day, I guess what I believe, is that Adams County is a fiscally conservative, fiscally responsible county. That's who our people are, and that's who we are. And that's what I've grown up with. That's just what I've always believed. And now that, we're in a position to actually make decisions based on what you believe, we need to follow through on that. I think a lot of progress has been made this year in trying to get on the same page. I think all of the little proxy things that have been in the newspaper all year have all been about this. So at the end of the day, this budget is what this whole year has been about. And I cannot support this budget. I just can't. There's 3 real reasons that I can't. Like I said, I am encouraged that I think we're moving in the right direction and that we're maybe getting some traction to solve some of these problems. But we do have 3 problems, 3 big problems. The first is we're taxing too much. The second is we're spending too much. And the third is it's not balanced. It just isn't. So to go through those 3 kind of briefly, on the taxes, on all of these, we have a 10-year trend that is staying the same and is not being changed with this budget. Over the last 10 years, we've increased taxes on Adams County residents by $20.4 million. And that is not talking about property values going up. This is talking about the rate has gone up. New tax dollars above and beyond increase in growth. Over the last 10 years, that's a 38% increase in property taxes. Year over year, this budget is a 20% increase in property taxes over last year. Luckily, the state won't let us do that. So even if we approve this budget as is, they're going to cap this. They're going to come in and say, you can't raise taxes that much. On spending over 10 years, this budget will put us at 83% increase in spending over 10 years. Over that same period of time, inflation was only 19%. That means that we're 64% over inflation. This is not a balanced budget. If we look at just the 8 property tax driven accounts, this budget is $3.9 million upside down. We can't do that forever. And I know that what we're going to hear probably from some of my colleagues who I respect, but I just disagree with, is they're going to say, we don't spend it all. That is true. We don't spend everything. But of that deficit, that almost $4 million deficit, we're only not spending about 20% of that. So that isn't the answer. That's part of it. That helps, but it's still way upside down. If we were to factor in the other accounts in addition to just the 8 property tax ones, I'm sure that number would be double that. We're also going to hear, I'm sure, that cash balances are rising. How over 10 years do we have $16 million more dollars in all of our accounts than we had 10 years ago? And that's a legitimate question. How can that be if we have deficit spending? Part of that brings me back to my first point. Yes, we have $16 million new dollars, but we've raised new taxes of $20 million. Okay, so that's a big part of it. Some of it, 20% or so, is unspent. That accounts for some of it. Of that $16 million, 3.5 of it is federal COVID relief money. That's a one-time payment, so you can't count that either. So at the end of the day, I'm encouraged that I think we're getting some traction, that we're hopefully maybe getting closer to the same page. But at the end of the day, I believe what I believe. I do, and I can't go back on that. So I don't believe that we should be raising taxes. I don't believe that we should be spending like we are. And I don't believe that we should have an unbalanced budget. And for those reasons, I just can't support this. And I'm hoping that maybe there's a few other of you that will agree with me. And if not, then I am hoping that next year we can at least agree that this is a problem and all three of those have to get fixed.
I'm not going to reply to that because you and I have gone round and round about that for a few years, and I'm not going to change your mind, and you're not going to change mine, so I will let the panel discuss.
Any other comments?
I don't, I appreciate Corey's diligence in studying the figures and the numbers, but I don't think he's right in his assumptions. And I don't want to debate point by point, but when you look at the overall budget, we really have no control over what taxes are by way of assessed evaluation that taxes are based on. Revenue generated by just the simple plates on the Amish budgets. I mean, that's a cost, but it's a tax. But we did it for the roads. And so anything that we've ever enacted has been to cover the overall expenses. And if we don't spend our budget, okay, it's a budget. You don't have to spend every penny. And it's good to have a comfortable cash reserve. How much is too much? I don't think we can ever have enough to anticipate unexpected emergencies. So I'm comfortable with the budget. I don't think this is the point to discuss at this point in time when we're at our 12th hour here. And I think we need to move on the budget.
So you're okay with the fact knowing that some of these we're authorizing them to spend more than what they've got?
Yeah, well, some of those items are, for instance, parks, which we discussed, do not bring in revenue. It's a quality of life issue, and it has to be paid for and maintained, whether or not you're not going to pay for an entire park system for a county with soccer fees. I mean, those are things that have to be paid for. So, user fees are not going to cover some of these items, like we've discussed.
I think that Parks and Recreation is a really good example. I'm glad you brought that one up. I agree they may not break even, but you still have to have a plan for how you're going to fund it. So, for example, they're basically half paid for with property taxes and half paid with user fees. They are upside down, combine those two by about $80,000 a year. So what's going to happen? Like, you got to still have a plan. Where does that 80 come from?
Well, if you want to remove property taxes or lower property taxes, are you suggesting get rid of the parks?
I'm saying we just need a plan. So even if that's a good one where we say, hey, we need Parks and Rec, we need them, we recognize that they're not going to pay for themselves, you still got to say, where's that other 80,000 coming from? Is it coming from county general, or you got to have a plan for it? A year from now, there just won't be any money left in the account. So even if you need it, you got to have a plan.
Didn't we go over that last time? And there is money every time, even though we run this deficit, and we have since the beginning of time.
So that particular one, they're upside down by 50,000 in each account. They don't spend 10 each year. So they are still 40 upside down. So they will run out. Give it 2-3 years. They'll be out.
This has been going on for 10 years, and they've never ran out?
It started at about 150, and next year it's going to be down to about 15. So it will run out.
I agree with you, Corey, that we do need a plan. Last month, we did talk about starting. It was too late to start, but starting next year, we have several things that we absolutely have to work on. And I think everybody here is in agreement that we need to work on some things.
Okay. So do we want to move forward with a motion?
I move that we accept the budget as presented for fiscal year 2022.
Dennis made the motion.
Ordinance number 2021-5.
2021-5.
I'll second.
Fred seconded. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Who was the second?
Fred. And let me pass around. Okay, Tony, the next thing is the salary ordinance,
Yeah,
correct?
and that's 2021-4. And if that one is approved, then you could pass each of those three around, and I'll get them from Kathy, and then Bree can get stuff into Gateway.
Okay, the salary ordinance was sent, resent that a couple days ago. Everyone have a chance to look at that? Any discussion concerning the salary ordinance? Were there any changes to this, Bree, since the budget discussions? Were there any major changes to this? No. Okay. Do I have a motion for the salary ordinance? This is 2021-6, Tony?
4.
This is 4.
Yep.
Even, what was the solid waste?
Solid waste was 3. The
Okay.
budget we just did was 5. And then the wages and ordinance was 4.
Okay.
I just kind of got them out of order on the agenda. The one you're doing now is 2021-4.
Okay. Here.
Tony, you see solid waste was 3,
2021-3,
and what was 5?
the Adams County budget,
And what are we calling this one?
salary ordinance,
4.
2021-4.
Tony?
We put on there the bi-weekly, hourly, and annual.
But this says 5, 2021-5.
What were you looking at? I thought that was 4.
Yeah, you're good. This is 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is 2021-5. Do I have a motion for the salary ordinance?
Make a motion to accept.
Fred made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
John?
Who was the motion?
Fred and John, yes. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Corey, Tony,
What?
Corey was the second vote on the salary ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. We ready to move on, council? Ready? Okay. Next on the agenda is Colton Bickle. You have an update for us, Colton?
I do. Pass this out.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time this morning. One of the things that we wanted to do this year was to get in front of you a little more often. This was supposed to be in July at the beginning of the third quarter. My wife and I welcomed our first child, so that kind of threw timeline for a wrench on a few things. But wanted to come and just give you an update. I did at the beginning of the year, looking back at 2020, what we were going to try to accomplish this year. So wanted to come give a quick update, answer any questions that you may have. And so I gave you a document that kind of outlines some various different things. I may not touch on everything within that, but wanted to hit a few things. Attraction-wise, there have been 61 leads that we have been sent from the state or from the region. We have been able to submit different sites or buildings on 23 of those projects with 3 project wins. Those 3 projects are going to be around 100 jobs, 100 new jobs, and $100 million worth of investment. So it's always great to be able to do that. The reason that we can only submit on 23 of those 61 leads is because we may not have a building that fits a specific lead need, right? So they may send a building, they need 200,000 square feet. We don't have that. And so one of the things that we're doing this year is looking at different site options. So we're kind of locked into what we have, but if we want to be able to submit on more leads, we need more acreage and we need more building size. And so we've looked at a couple different site studies to help us identify where should that be. Both, here in Decatur, throughout the county and Bern as well. And so we worked on a couple of those and are still in the process of those, but we do have some sites identified that we've been exploring. We recently received, the EDC received a nice grant from AEP. I can't disclose the amount of that yet because there'll be an official release at some point, but we received a large grant to be able to explore that some more. And so we're really happy to have received that. Looking at business retention, so keeping our existing businesses here, working with them. We've seen over 10 projects this year with investments of just under $4 million. And so that's the creation of 126 new jobs, so we're excited for that. We don't really have the net job number because there have been some industries who aren't at the same employment they were at the beginning of the year. Maybe they've dropped 20 or whatever, so they don't have that net number gained, but we have gained additional jobs this year. Unemployment rate has continued to be very low. April, May, and June, I think we were the lowest in the state, county wide, and so we're historically very low in that regard. Rlf Loans, which is a program that we have, a revolving loan fund that we can extend. We've seen 4 loans close this year to $345,000 to local Adams County businesses that either allow them to expand, create more jobs. So we're excited about that as well. The Ready Grant, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a state program that was sent out. Northeast Indiana region submitted as a region to receive up to $50 million for various projects. Adams County has 2 projects within that regional plan, one being the Merit Center, another being housing. The housing project will really be not one singular project. It's in the plan as one project, but that could be multiple different housing additions, whether it's a subdivision or an apartment complex, single-family housing, whatever it is. There could be multiple different projects within that one umbrella. And then the EDC itself is going through a rebrand. We actually, last Friday, the board approved the new logo. So that will be unveiled sometime here in the final quarter of the year. So we're really excited about that. That comes with a new website. It's going to be much more attractive to site selectors and anybody visiting Adams County. So we're really excited to have a new website that brings us into 2021 and not in the early 2000s, which our current website is. Some other things that we've done, the Broadband Survey, that was a countywide survey that we completed. We are working on an early learning coalition that we have put together. You all will receive an invite to an event in early November that is going to be about early learning in Adams County. Adams County ranks near the bottom when it comes to early learning services in the state of Indiana, and Indiana ranks near the bottom nationally. And so we've got a lot of work to do in the early learning arena, and that really affects our workforce. And so that's why the EDC is involved. I submitted last week a grant for $150,000 that will help extend services for an existing provider at the Merit Center. So we're hoping to get that and we'll know about that here soon. And then continue to develop at the Merit Center, as you all know. We had a community work day this past Saturday where we had the Belmont High School football team come out and help us, and they really did a great job, and it was a really successful event. We'll have some sort of event hopefully soon where people are invited out to see that. And so that's kind of a recap of the first 2 quarters, first 3 quarters of 2021. Looking at the rest of the year, we're going to continue to work on attraction projects, submit leads, work on the north site study and a mid-site study, the mid-site being a site that has been identified in the middle of the county. We can't share where those are because we're still working to identify property owners and gauge their interest, but we're working on that. From a business retention expansion standpoint, we anticipate probably an additional $10 million worth of business expansion here before the end of the year. I don't know how many jobs that will create, but that's just what is anticipated. Of course, that could change depending upon what happens. Other things, we are putting a housing subcommittee together based off of our survey of the EDC board so that we can begin to pursue that. We're going to continue to work on the Merit Center, and again, the rebrand will come out hopefully sometime here in Q4. So that is just, again, a very quick run through of everything. I don't want to take up too much time. I wanted to give you an update and answer any questions you have. I will add, October 19th, I sent an email to all of you about the new chancellor for Ivy Tech Northeast. She's going to be in town at the Merit Center just for an open house. It's a stop in, stay for 5 minutes, talk to her. It's not an obligation. It's from 3 to 5 at the Merit Center on October 19th. We would love to see you all there to show support for Ivy Tech and the services that we may be able to bring down here for Adams County residents. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have. If you don't think of any now, certainly feel free to reach out to me if anything comes up.
Is the job expansion stuff you mentioned, is that with existing businesses, or are you aware of something new coming in town or coming in the county?
We've had 3 new projects this year, so that's new businesses coming in to about 100 jobs so far.
Okay.
For the rest of the year, so one thing I didn't mention, but we all know Dean Foods is closing. There has been some interest in that building that would create some jobs or retain some of those jobs. We don't have all the details on that yet, so can't really share that. But there is some interest in that facility. More details will come. But other than that, I don't anticipate any new jobs from any new businesses coming in, but that's not something that we can really anticipate. It just kind of happens when it happens. But we have seen 126 new jobs from existing businesses so far this year.
Thank you.
Colton, what you mentioned about you did a broadband survey. Would you mind sharing kind of the results or what the feedback on that was? Particularly that ARPA money, we have limited things we can use it for, and broadband has been one that really makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what you found.
Yeah, so I'll follow back and send an email to all of you with those results so you can kind of look through it further. But the general consensus was we really need to update the technology we're using. A lot of people are still on DSL, which is just a slower technology. So that needs to be updated. There are still spots of the county where service isn't either available or reliable. Another big aspect that came through was just the affordability of the services that we do have. Just because you can get service doesn't mean you can afford service. And so those are kind of the big highlights that came through. We were hoping to receive more responses than we did. We received 230 some households responded. There's a map that kind of shows we asked them to provide their address or their coordinates so that we could kind of see where that was at. Good response from throughout, certainly in Decatur, Bern. There are more responses within the city areas, which we know have service. So we wanted more of that rural area. Did receive some good feedback there, but the general response was, or my takeaway is, just because we have some service there doesn't mean it's reliable, so we need to look at the technology being used, and then is it affordable? But I'll send out those full results for you to kind of look through yourself, and then answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Colton, you have a question?
Colton, I'm wondering on broadband, the state has announced they are going to be putting a lot of money in statewide broadband. How is that, or did you find out anything regarding how much the state is doing and how the county can work with the state to?
Yeah, I think we would definitely work with the state on whatever programs they roll out. We've worked with the Indiana Broadband Department, I think is what they call it, on how we can partner with them and extend what we have available here with what they're trying to accomplish. So we're working with that department with Ernie Holtray. He kind of helped us through some things. We've discussed becoming broadband-ready communities, which just puts us on a list of communities that said, we've done some of these preliminary things to really put us on the top of the list that the developer's looking to develop. So as those programs come out, we would certainly look to, whether it's funding or just mapping assistance, whatever it is, we would look to utilize the state services to couple with whatever we're going to do here. Because we're going to set forth a plan ourselves of, okay, here's what the data is telling us, here's maybe our next action steps. I'm sure one of those action steps will be, what is the state doing, what are their programs, and how can we tap into that to.
I think the Association of Indiana Counties, is that, you seen, one of the things they emailed out had a broadband check test or something on there. So Association of Indiana Counties is also kind of involved, I guess, with all the member counties.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, it's certainly a statewide issue, and as the state develops their programs, every county needs to be in a position to enhance what they have. And that's part of the state's goal, right, is to get every county kind of caught up. And so we'll definitely be a part of that to, whatever we need to do to enhance services, we'll definitely work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Colton, I haven't been out to the Merit Center yet. Are there available office spaces out there? Do you plan on moving out there?
No, the EDC doesn't plan on moving out there at this point. So we do have 4 tenants in that facility now. I'm hesitant to say there's office space just because there are 4 tenants. There's a 5th tenant that is located in this building. I don't know if I can say if they're moving out there. I know they are, but I don't know if it's a public knowledge type of thing. So there will be 5 tenants sometime soon. What we're trying to do is gauge, the purpose of the Merit Center is to provide educational opportunities, so we don't want to lock up too much space in offices, because then we don't have room for the educational programming. And we're close to a point where, based on the early learning we're trying to achieve and the educational purposes, to extend any more office space might put us in a tough spot. And so I'm hesitant to say there is, but I would be hesitant to say there's not as well. I think it's just a conversation of the specific office that may be looking for space. Does it bode well with what we're trying to accomplish, that specific office? Then maybe there's more of a conversation there. So I would say it's a conversation. I wouldn't say yes or no to that, but it's certainly a conversation we can have if someone's interested.
Okay.
But the EDC doesn't plan to move out there because we envision the Merit Center being a standalone thing, right? It's going to have its own, it's a not-for-profit organization. It's going to have its own board, its own staff outside of the county or the EDC or the city of Decatur or whatever it is. It'll be its own thing. And so the EDC doesn't plan on moving out there.
Any other questions for Colton?
Well, thank you again. If anything comes up, certainly feel free to reach out. I think you all have my contact information. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sheriff.
The sheriff has an additional, we'll start with the additional of $26,500 for utilities for the jail. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we kind of maybe helped fix some of that issue this year's budget. The last 2 budgets, we've always moved almost, 19 we moved $35,000 and then 20 we moved $40,000. This year, I think you guys put another either $40,000 or $50,000 into the utilities budget. But it's just something that we're still trying to figure out and get it all hammered out. And, but we're going to be short this year, so that's why we're asking for the additional.
Then you have one for, I'm assuming it's yours, the lit public safety, gas oil lube, 27,000.
Yes, and basically what that is the gas prices have increased over $1 than they were last year. Other departments have put in $11,344.70 into that, paying back into the county general fund. So that helps soften that a little bit, but it's not the full of it. But with the gas prices spiking this year a little bit, we didn't have enough in the budget for it.
Dan, is there anywhere, now that we're getting closer to the end of the year, that there's any money unspent from accounts that we can transfer instead of doing additional?
We've looked at it. We've kind of over the last couple of years trimmed that stuff that we've done in the past. Like we transferred out of meals last time before. We don't have it this year to do because we've kind of trimmed that excess that we've always done that with before. So this year we don't have that to make that. Regina and I, we spent several hours trying to look around, see if we can do it. As soon as we move one, then our percentage for that, I didn't want to do it and then have to come to you again or go in the red. So this is our best option right now.
Make a motion to accept.
Fred made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dennis seconded. Any further discussion? Are you gonna spend your entire jail software maintenance line item? You've only spent $556.
No, we finally got our bill straightened out with Central Square, so we'll be paying a bill of, I think, $72,000 out of that. So, yeah, that usually is gone, but we've been negotiating over our contract.
I forgot you told us about that
We
bill.
finally got that settled, and that should be being paid the next payout, I think. So that will be gone.
Okay. Any further discussion for the sheriff on these additions? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now you have your pay matrix that you want to discuss.
Correct. In the budget with the pay salary that you guys have just passed, there was a matrix. You have seen these, correct? Okay, the jail or the dispatch is the newest one. We've talked about that before, not where to put them on the NE scale, so their jobs really aren't their jobs. So basically all the pay ordinance covers all these things. So I'm asking you to approve the matrix for dispatch, for jail, and for deputies, basically covering that the pay ordinance covers these matrices. So I'm just asking for you guys to publicly approve these three pay matrices.
How did you come up with those numbers for the dispatchers?
Basically, a little bit was the starting pay that they're making now, and then we just kind of followed suit with some of our other matrices as far as the breakdown of years when the bumps happened. So we took our starting pay now that our new dispatchers, because right now our new dispatcher gets paid the same as a 20-year veteran. So we started with that pay and then just increased and went from there, kind of followed the other matrices that were already approved.
Was the longevity
You're paying for the experience. If we don't pay, they will leave.
Stan, a couple years ago, we had talked about this and you were on council and you said at that time there was hesitation with you concerning the matrix for the sheriff's department. Do you remember what your reasoning was for that?
And initially, my hesitation was going to the matrix because we had not had a matrix. But as we found ourselves, in comms, and Sheriff Rackway brought this up to us too. He did comp with several other counties of similar sizes and populations. and found that we were indeed underpaying compared to similar departments in other counties. So I did finally agree and that going to the matrix was an appropriate thing to do. We tried to get the officers to where they needed to be. And then, I don't know if it was the next year or the year after that, we also moved the jail staff to that matrix. But we stopped short of including the dispatchers within that matrix. But I don't know that it's entirely inappropriate to move them to that matrix as a part of the emergency services, so. But initially, that's where I kind of was hesitant to go to the matrix, but as we talked about it and did comps, I felt like it was appropriate. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what that conversation was that you had with council at the time, so that's why I was just wanting a refresher. So Sheriff, what happens if you change job descriptions? You take something away from one and put it to another. How does that work with this pay?
Which matrices are you talking about?
Any of them?
Well, I don't see a job description of a deputy changing. I don't see the description of a jailer changing. The only thing that might change would be in their rank, sergeants' description might change to some degree, but I just can't see any changing to that degree that will affect their roles and responsibility of supervision or guidance. These titles and positions have been set for decades, and they really haven't changed. And the matrix change in emergency services is very common now. Wells County has gone to it, Huntington has gone to it. A lot of them have to go to it just because it takes care of your people on their own, to where I shouldn't ever really have to come back to you like we did this year for the increase that was given. If the normal 1% to 3% bumps are given yearly, that goes to the base salary, and that corrects everybody all the way through. So I think that's one reason why these have become very common practice in emergency services, because you're not always coming back and fighting the same fight. But I don't see the roles and responsibilities changing. In dispatch, the IDAX coordinator, that's all set by Indianapolis. I mean, what their responsibilities are and stuff. So I just don't see that type of stuff changing.
So everyone listed in this job description and their titles, their job descriptions are set. They will not be changing.
That is correct.
Okay.
And Dan, I think I told you during the 3-day budget hearings that of all the things county government does, law enforcement to me is the core. I mean, that is the number one thing that we do. Property rights and enforcement. So, we got issues with the budget. However, you're the last place I would cut, the last one. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? Are we ready to have a motion?
I don't know if you need a motion on that because you already voted on the salary ordinance.
Does that automatically secure these then? I just didn't know.
So, I mean, the salary, it was all in the salary ordinance.
Well, I think we probably do.
But the
because
salary
ordinance
ordinance
is
doesn't do the tiers and things
Right.
like that. I would just like to, I would
If
like
you
to
want to
see.
do a motion on it, that's fine, I'll include it in.
Like the dollar values were
Finding
approved
people.
there.
For
and
this
now-
year.
Yeah, now
This-
we're
this is
approving
for,
the matrix.
this is
that's set up.
ongoing. Yes,
For the matrix alone.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Well, you can't have too many motions.
Yeah.
It's just a little more.
But can we do one motion for all three matrices?
Writing over here.
I think we can make a motion to accept what has been presented. Can we do it that way?
So you already have the deputies matrix approved and the jail approved, right? That's already been by prior council.
The chief deputy's position was moved into the matrix, and the jail commander's was approved, and that is new.
Okay.
But nothing else was new except for that, and then the whole dispatch was new. So that's why I guess I'm asking for all three to be approved.
You comfortable with that?
Yeah, make a motion to
Okay.
accept as submitted. Does that work?
Okay.
second.
John made the motion and Fred seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
All right.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And do I need to be here for transfers?
No, we'll
Okay,
we'll discuss that later. Thank you, Dan.
thank you guys very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Yoder. How are we today?
Good. Another beautiful day. Sun's shining. It's not raining.
You have additionals, that's why you're here, right?
That is correct.
Okay. You want to briefly tell us about those?
So I actually have one for the engineering department side of it. And I figured we'll probably want to do the highway and engineering separate, so I'll do the engineering first.
How much is that one for?
$250.
Okay, for equipment?
Yes,
Like
for
Hume
equipment.
Bridge?
Yes.
Okay.
The pickup in the engineering department, I am now driving that, and it's never had a two-way radio in it. So that's where this extra is going to help pay for that. So basically, I'm gonna get a two-way radio put in it. That way I can communicate when I'm out on anything with any of the other employees.
Okay. And then,
Same question I asked Dan, is there anywhere you can transfer that? I mean, it's only $250, but
I mean, yeah, there would be, but since I guess since that line item was already there for equipment, thought we would just use that for right now, but
Where's that come out of then?
Hume Bridge?
yeah, Hume Ridge.
Tony, what's your
It's a
advice?
it's a Hume fund. I mean, Corey and I have gone round and round and round about the Hume fund, so I think it's fine.
I make a motion to accept.
Fred made a motion to accept for $250 for the equipment on Hume Bridge. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who,
Dennis, Fred and Dennis.
I almost said who first did.
Any further discussion concerning this additional? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so you have a couple highway ones.
Yes, I actually have 3 in highway, and the first line is perf for $2,600, employee uniforms for $1,000, and telephone for $100. So basically, what we try to do is figure conservatively, when we figure this. So now that we're at the end of the year, though, there's a chance we could come up short on it. So I guess, going forward, we're just trying to prepare for the end of the year. So if we come in now and do it, and then the end of the year, if it looks short, then.
Was there a lot of overtime for that perf?
I
24?
mean, we had a lot of overtime last winter, but going forward, trying to figure, it's hard to tell in this next year what's gonna happen, but
Well,
I guess I'm not maybe understanding.
no, that's, I mean,
Yeah. Yes, we had a lot
That
of
is-
overtime last year.
Kind of make sure they get through the end of the year, and this is out of MVH.
Mhm.
Correct, Brett?
Yes, this is all out in VH.
In case they run out of months to come before you, in case they do run out, they need to make sure they're kosher to the end of the year.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Fred, do I have a second?
second.
John? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And quick question, I guess
Yeah.
speaking on overtime, you guys operate on Monday, Thursday, 10-hour days, right?
No, we're on, after Labor Day, we went back to 5/8.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yep.
I was thinking, you said snow removal last year, like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's all. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Brad. Is the hospital, anybody from the hospital here yet? Okay,
We got some other
Responsibility.
yeah, and then
I
can
don't
we,
know that any of them.
can we go ahead and talk about the ARPA additionals then as well? Julie Marie, are you covering that for us?
Yes.
Okay. So Julie Marie's going to talk about the ARPA additionals. They sent out, Julie and Mark, I believe, sent out something like Monday before the council meeting last month. So now we've had a chance to read those. Is it resolutions?
Yes,
Okay.
we have resolutions. The ARPA allows for a number of different items. Mark and I have researched to figure out what can be used and what cannot be used. Some of the things that we are finding are necessary right now are an electric generator, an HVAC system. We were thinking COVID pay for employees that couldn't make it to work because of COVID-related issues. And what's the other one? Oh, consulting and engineering services. Those can all be covered by ARPA funds. And we have about 3 million of that currently. The only change that I have, oh, by the way, Resolution 2021-18 was passed by the commissioners last month, and that authorized the council then to make the additional appropriations. We have to advertise the appropriations, so I made the suggestion of the appropriations in the denominations that I have in here, 25 for additional pay, 300,000 for HVAC, 300,000 for the electric generator, and another 25 for additional consulting fees and legal fees. Like Mark and I, we can get paid out of that rather than county funds. So I have all of those resolutions. The only thing I wanted to bring to your attention is after speaking to Shannon with regards to the resolution on the COVID-19 paid relief form, the form that I provided you offers 4 options: isolation, experiencing COVID symptoms and seeking medical diagnosis, caring for immediate family member, or caring for children whose place of care or school is closed and there's no other childcare provider. Shannon suggested that rather than simply have number 2, currently experiencing symptoms and seeking medical diagnosis, that be changed to have a positive COVID test. That way, if somebody reports in that they have symptoms and later on they do get a positive COVID test, we can retroactively pay them for their time off. But that way, they won't automatically get the pay until there is a positive COVID test. So this would follow something more stringent than the FFCRA did. The first one I sent you followed FFCRA. This is more stringent. It's not mandatory, so we don't have to have that. So it's entirely up to you as to whether or not you want the positive COVID test or you just want symptoms. Outside of that, the resolutions that I have for your consideration are exactly as I previously submitted them to you. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
Sheriff does.
Yes, Sheriff.
Is the COVID pay retroactive to a past date, or is it from when it's passed or only going forward? Because I've had some employees in the last month or 2 that have tested positive that have used their sick time.
I think that's a human resources question.
My recommendation would be that it's effective as of if they pass it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just check it.
Yeah, because where do we draw the line of what's fair to go backwards versus what's not? So just to make it easier, if you pass it today, then today is the day that it's effective, and we'll do it moving forward.
Okay.
Julie Marie, is this for like up to 80 hours in a 1-year period?
It
What is the timeline so that we're not continually paying for?
Yes, it is 100% compensation of regular pay for the duration of absences up to 2 weeks during a single 12-month period of time. So basically, 1 full COVID quarantine every year.
And that's up to, you said up to 2 weeks?
Up to 2 weeks.
Yeah, so that means that
12-month period.
if our COVID guidelines say that they can return within 10 days after the date of an onset of symptoms, if they test positive, then if their 10th day is only 8 days, then we're not going to just automatically pay them for the 80 hours. It's going to be depending on when they were actually scheduled to work. So if I go out on Wednesday and I can come back the following Monday, I'm only going to get the 7 or 8 days, not the full 10, just because.
I never thought of that. Thank you for clarifying that. But then they would have 5 extra days or whatever it was to use
Yeah,
8 months from now.
Right.
Again, yeah.
Yep.
If they needed that or their children were out sick or something.
How will you differentiate between seasonal flu and COVID?
you would have to get a COVID test under this.
And so that's why we changed it from, I suggested that we change it from experiencing symptoms to actually testing positive, because I don't think that we should be immediately awarding pay based on symptoms, because how do we differentiate between the flu or allergies or anything like that versus COVID? And the way to do that is with a positive test. So we would put them on leave of absence up until they report a positive test to me, and then I would work with Bree to make that pay retroactive if we need to, if they test positive.
Well, sick leave, we're moving to PTO.
Right.
And so sick leave will cover the initial absence. And then proving COVID by way of testing would allow them to enter into this reimbursement instead of using sick pay.
Correct.
Okay.
And the likelihood that this whole event would occur in the same pay period is pretty high, because our pay periods are 2 weeks long. So if somebody calls, I mean, it might happen to where they call me on Friday and say, hey, I'm testing for COVID today, and she's got to process the next Tuesday, but even then, we should still have the results within those 4 days, because they process results over the weekend and everything too.
You get results like in, I think, 15 minutes anymore.
So it wouldn't be a situation, I don't think that we would have a situation necessarily that we would have to say, okay, you're getting paid for 2 sick days this pay period, and the next pay period, we have to give you those sick days back, but we're gonna pay you for COVID pay. I think it would all resolve itself within the same 2-week period, for the most part.
Dan?
Would a rapid test and or a PCM test both count as a positive test?
So the CDC released guidelines a couple weeks ago that yes, now that a rapid is accepted, so yeah, we.
Because my employees, I offer that at the facility, so I just want to make sure that would count towards that,
Yeah,
okay?
they released guidelines a couple weeks ago that said yes, it does count, so yeah, we should be good there.
Any other questions?
So can employees get tested at the jail then?
My employees can be tested and inmates are all tested at the jail. I have an inmate, if they come in symptoms, I have them come in and my nurse test them and we have results in 15 minutes.
Do you have to buy those or is the state giving you
The
those?
state gives them to us.
Is that just for your employees or can I come too?
What was
It's
the,
only for the jail employees and inmates. Yeah, I can make you an inmate.
hey, Julie?
No, it's okay.
What was the cost of the generator again?
I'm sorry?
What's the cost of the generator again?
I'm sorry.
What's the cost of the generator again?
$300,000 for the generator, $300,000 for the
HVAC.
HVAC system.
For this building, right? No.
That's just the anticipated, because they've gotten a few quotes so far, and so that's the general range. Understand that the ARP funds remain in the major fund. This will only take out what is up to the amount that's been allocated, appropriated. So it stays there. If the fund comes in at $200,000, then there's just another $100,000 that doesn't get used out of the fund.
So the 50,000 that you're allocating for the COVID pay, is that just to get us to the end of the year?
That is to at least get you as far as you need to. You can always dip into it, but the appropriation process has to be advertised, and then we only meet here in council once a month. So there would be a delay in being able to get more funds. So that's why I'm saying go ahead and do 50 now. If you don't use all of it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
If you need more, this at least gives them and the auditors and the Human Resources Department a head start as to when to tell us, okay, next month you need to appropriate more.
And they will have to do another appropriation in January or whatever, because starting January 1, you'll be back to not having anything.
That's what my question was, yeah.
But we're hoping that this, I just approximated what might be necessary for the end of the year. But if you need more next month or something, you need more.
Do we want to approve all these together, or do you want to do them separately?
Let's break them up.
Okay. So which one do you want to approve first?
Let's start with the resolution for installation of an electric generator at the Adams County Service Complex to improve the air quality, exchange, and mitigate the spread of COVID. That would be an appropriation of $300,000.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Fred? Do I have a second?
A second.
Kathy? Fred and Kathy? Further discussion?
I'm a little bit concerned on both of the two that are both 300,000, because that'd be 600 total. And I can see how we can use the money, so that's nice that it's there. I'm just really eager to do some really transformative stuff with that money, and I don't want to those are big numbers, that would be taken away from it. So I'd hate to get into broadband or sewer or whatever we get to and say, hey, we're $500,000 short, because of projects that we really should be able to cover that kind of stuff in our regular budget. So to me, they feel like kind of one time, they're capital costs that we always need, like they're expected capital costs. It's not like a tornado hit or something that, it's not like COVID hurt us on those. So I'm a little nervous on both of the 300 ones.
So do we have quotes and that's why we came up with that number, or how did we come up with that number?
For both the generator and the HVAC system, and I think it's hovering around 275 right now. Between 275 and 300 are some of the quotes that have been received. So that's why I allocated.
For each expense.
Corey, if a tornado would hit, that would sever essentially our communications for the county. That's part of the reason why the generator is recommended. We have no power backup if we would lose power here. So the county would have limited to no services.
Can unspent
one and
funds
done.
be redirected if they're not totally used?
Unspent funds stay in the major ARP trust. They are just never taken out. So you just take out what you need. This just allocates up to this amount without having to come back for further appropriation.
Stan?
Part of the reason for the generator is this is an emergency shelter. So the current generator that we have is like maxed out. Plus, it came over on the ark. It's pretty old. So, and one of the things the exhaust does is kind of creates fumes in the basement of it. So it's necessary for air quality and to preserve this as an emergency shelter, for sure. And so we saw this as an opportunity to improve that and provide for better air quality now, plus the emergency shelter. And plus that generator also, we put in uninterrupted power supplies or UPSs last year. And part of the things that those UPSs do is preserve the integrity of the server room, the IT, but it also preserves the refrigerators in the health department for vaccines too. So those UPSs are only, I think they only go out, what, 3 hours? 4 hours. And so after that time, the generator would have to take over. And so, all these things combined kind of gave us a reason to think we need to update our generator. So that was kind of our thing.
So the generator is one that we wouldn't have done if it weren't for this, most likely. We need it, but.
We had discussed that, but it just really wasn't a practical option, until this became available. It's like, this may make it possible to do the upgrades that we need.
Because I could kind of see that if it's an extra one where it's like, this is not something that it's not like this building's HVAC where it just went down and we should be able to cover things like that normally.
Okay, do I have a motion for?
Which one is this one? This is,
What'd you say, 2021?
this is the HVAC generator.
2115?
2021-15.
What did you say it was?
Okay, well,
Double check.
Is this for the generator? We already have
Yes.
motions.
We have motion
already
for the
motioned
generator? Okay.
I thought we had a second as well.
20?
21-20?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next one.
Next one is the ARP COVID-19 Local Fiscal Recovery Fund for compensation of employees directly affected by the COVID-19 virus. That would be an appropriation of $50,000. And that would include a paid leave request form, which I would provide to Shannon, which does indicate the 4 reasons for COVID-related pay, subject to quarantine, positive test for COVID, caring for an immediate family member who is isolated or quarantined, or caring for children because their place of daycare or school is closed because of quarantine and there is no other suitable person to take care of them.
And that one is 2021.
21.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Kathy? Do I have a second?
Second.
Keith? Any further discussion? And this is the one that Shannon recommended.
What Shannon recommended, yes.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. 2022, Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund for legal, consulting, technical, and engineering services. That would provide the cost for those kinds of services, allocating $25,000 for that.
Dennis?
What are the engineering services you speak of?
That's a good question. I think that it would probably encompass services in which we need to talk to somebody with regards to consulting whether or not a certain project is going to be appropriate or feasible for the county before we undertake to ask the commissioners to approve it or bring an appropriation to the county. Basically just consulting, anything that is necessary for consulting services.
Over $250,000 projects sometimes need engineering to be done. Mark, is that correct? Is that the figure? So that kind of covers any engineering that might need to be done. If there's a project that comes along, whether it's broadband, sewer, HVAC, whatever, if it reaches that threshold and they need to get engineering services, that would be covered under this.
And it's just for projects related to approved ARPA.
Approved ARPA,
Okay.
yes.
Stan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, basically what he said is we had to hire somebody to write specs to let out bids for that HVAC project.
Does that answer your question, Dennis?
Yes, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Dennis, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Kathy? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next one.
And the last one is Resolution 2123. That would be fiscal recovery funds for the implementation of heating, ventilation, and cooling improvements to the county system to improve air quality and mitigate the spread of COVID. That would be an appropriation of $300,000.
Make a motion to accept.
John? Do I have a Fred made a second? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is that everything concerning ARPA funds at this point?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Julie Marie. Okay, next up we have Mr. Burry and Mr. Miller with the hospital.
Morning.
Morning.
Keith. Keith.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Morning.
Mark. You guys have the same shirts on?
I thought that too. I called him this morning and I said, hey, what are you wearing?
Very possibly.
Popsy twins?
Oh,
I'll let the chat.
Team uniforms.
yeah, that's right.
Go ahead, gentlemen.
Well, I think there were some questions, and I guess I want to make sure that we answer whatever questions council has in regard to the bond issue and the repayment of that bond, and if there's specific questions that we can answer.
I don't know if this is the right right time to dig into it, but I mean, I do have questions about, the money that we pay the hospital every year, and the supposed need of it. I feel like we blindly just throw money at the hospital every year. And I really question whether it's all needed all the time like that. Because our county does have other needs, and the hospital does not open their books to anybody here to see it.
Okay.
So I do have a big issue with that, and I can probably speak for a few others on this council that feel the same way.
I'd be happy to respond.
Sure.
Okay. You're not throwing money at the hospital. It was a pledge of seated tax back in 2001 when the Adams County Economic Development Council, the taxing council, which was a combination of county council, city of Decatur, city of Bern, town of Geneva, and town of Monroe, all agreed that at that time that they were going to increase the seated tax by 0.2%. It was 0.2% before that. They increased it another 0.2% to make it 0.4%, with the pledge that that additional 0.2% would go to the hospital so that the hospital could build the new hospital facility. And I don't know what all everybody knows, but back when that was done, there were all kinds of committees, meetings, community meetings that were called in where people came in. We asked people back at that point in time, what do you want to do with the hospital? You have options. We can remodel, demolish, and build onto the existing hospital. We could build a new hospital, or we could sell out to Luther and Parkview, one of the big ones up in Fort Wayne. It was agreed almost unanimously. There were a few dissenters, but almost unanimously, we need to build a new hospital, keep it here local, keep our local control. And so that's why that tax was increased. As part of the bond issue, it was required that there be seeded funds be used to help pay that, because the hospital revenues by itself would not have been enough to do that and make sure that the hospital stayed solid back at that time. So that was 20 years ago. And at the time, it was pledged for a 30-year bond. So we're under that right now. The monies that come in are the exact same every year, except for the increases that occur because of seeded alone. But it's not being thrown at the hospital. Those funds come into the county on a monthly basis. They're then paid over to the trustee and paid down on those bonds, in addition to what the hospital pays on those bonds then also. So it's not operating capital. It's not going in to pay anything within the hospital. It is strictly paying on those bonds. And that was done back, like I said, 20 years ago on a 30-year bond. So we are roughly 20 years into that payment, another 10 years left on the payment of the bond. And so that's what those funds are being used for. But to my knowledge, the county is not paying anything else. And even the county's not necessarily paying that. I mean, it's paid by, it was the Economic Development Council that voted that the hospital was a good economic development. And I'm going to tell you that currently, right now, hospital employs 888 people. We have a payroll of $44 million. Employs a lot of people with benefits of retirement, healthcare insurance. Out of those 888 people, over 2/3 of them are Adams County residents. So a lot of those that have the insurance, it's insuring their families too. It's not just those people. So, and, if you think, was this a good economic development? I honestly think it was probably the best economic development the county could have possibly done. Just because and I'd ask you to talk to your counterparts in other counties where they did sell out and ask how big their hospitals are, what services they're providing locally, how many people they're employing, what was the economic development for their community by selling out. So.
Adam, question for you. So you said that the, what we're paying that comes out of the commissioner's budget, I believe, goes to pay down the bonds. Do the hospital also have a pledged amount they have to pay the bonds, or, because you're saying it doesn't affect the rest of their working capital or whatnot.
Right.
But are they also pledged to pay a certain amount in, whereas if we didn't, they would have to make up the difference, or what?
Yes.
Because then that would have an effect.
If the county didn't pay it, the hospital would have to. Now, the bond, when you increase the seated tax, when that was done 20 years ago, I don't know how many of you knew Phil Barger, but Phil Barger required that part of the resolution be that those funds could only be used for the payment of the bond for the hospital. In other words, once those bonds are paid for, that additional 0.2% goes away. If council wants to use that money for other things within the county, you'll have to reestablish that 0.2% because it just automatically expires when those bonds are paid off. So.
Adam, this might be an accounting procedure, but a couple of years ago, I talked to Dane Wheeler, what he did with our economic development funds. I said, how do you report that? He said, I report it as income.
Okay.
But I said, you don't pay the bonds with it? He said, no.
But that's not true. There's a misunderstanding there. That economic development never comes into the hospital at all. Hospital doesn't receive any of that. It doesn't come through the hospital and then out to the bonds. It goes, Tony, you pay it directly to the trustee? I mean, that's how it's supposed to be done. And the trustee then makes this, uses that as a portion of the semi-annual payments on the bonds. But none of that money comes into the hospital.
Well, still, the whole thing is, as with, you know, you can make numbers, interpret them in many different ways and say many different things. And, okay, so it doesn't go into the hospital. I'm not saying yea or nay to that. Well, but if the hospital doesn't need it, then of course that just opens up more money for whatever for the hospital. And my only thing is it really needed? All of it really needed every year like that? And right now, nobody knows anything because we never see the books. Nobody ever sees them.
Okay.
And so, you know, we do have other needs in our county for where some of those funds could be used. And right now, my impression is that we kind of blindly say, we're going to put, you know, just every year that money all goes to the same place, not just the hospital, a few other things too. And so what I'm saying is I would like to look into it.
Okay.
And like more information. Again, this is in depth enough, honestly, that I don't feel like this meeting is the place to fully cover that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think it's more of an executive session, so, you know, we could all prepare a little bit more, you know, for that.
Is that doable? Can we do that? Can we have an executive session with people with the hospital that would talk us through what is the fiscal situation?
Hospital can hold executive sessions for strategic planning, but I don't know if you guys can hold a executive session for something like this.
I don't believe so.
I don't think you can either. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I think what you
That
could,
falls underneath the statute for this.
but you
I don't
could
see any-
meet with the hospital. I mean, county council members could attend the hospital board meeting and they could provide information to county council members. I think that would be the way to do it.
And I want you to know something, the county commissioners appoint the board for the hospital. So there are 5 members of the hospital board. Russ Flickinger from Byrne is the chairman of that board. Larry Macklin's on it, Dave McIntyre, Candace Bauman, and Dr. Scott Lehman from Byrne. So I mean, there's a board that's appointed by the county commissioners, and that's what that board is for, is to operate and oversee. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's a matter of trust, whether or not it's a trust issue. Now, county commissioners do come in, and we do, and we show them because they appoint that board. So to say that there's no reporting back, that's not completely accurate because.
Well, it's not a trust. I mean, there is a trust but verify, kind of the old, I think Reagan.
Sure.
But I think collectively we're seeing the hospital expand, you know, nursing homes, you know, building, then there's revenues coming in from those nursing homes. If they, you know, leave the hospital, go to Woodcrest, there's money there to build these facilities, and then you're getting revenue from them. It seems like the hospital might be self-sustaining at this point, you know, acting as a business, which it is. And maybe we could renegotiate that seated money to go elsewhere versus the hospital. And if, you know, something comes up, we could start planning for that. Or if, you know, you guys had a rough year, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and, you know, something like that arises, come to county, maybe we can work some of that out, rainy day fund, whatever. But just at an airplane's view, it seems that the hospital is expanding and self-sustaining, I guess.
Okay. I mean, you'll require the Indiana Bond Bank and, to get involved in anything like that because those bonds are rated based upon
Right.
pledge
No,
to
I'm-
the county. I mean, and so there'd be a number of issues out here that would have to be dealt with.
Yeah, I was just, for instance,
Yeah.
you know, something to look at.
But again, you do have 5 members of the community that are on that board that are overseeing those kind of issues. You know, they get paid, I think, $6,000 a year to be on that board. So there's no personal gain for any of them.
I get it.
And like I said, and the commissioners oversee that then also, so because they make the appointment of that board.
Yeah, I get, and again, I think collectively our concern is it stops at the board. Like there's no.
That's by statute.
Right.
Because if the county hospital had to open their books, you better sell it.
What is that?
Because if we have weaknesses or strengths either way, we're one of the few counties out here that aren't owned by one of the bigger hospitals.
Well, we'd still have to agree to sell, the board would, or collectively, somebody.
We're just asking.
No, I'm just telling you, they're gonna come down here and they'll open up and they'll compete against us and it'll ruin the hospital. If something like that happens, if we have to start opening our books, we don't get to see what Parkview says. We don't get to see what Lutheran says and IU Medical Center.
As you mentioned, I mean, it's a community hospital here, and we're just asking, you know, I feel like the county is more than giving to the hospital, and the hospital just will take whether it's needed or not. And so I think what any of us are asking is to work together, and when, you know, if all the funds aren't needed, then we have some of that back to use in other spots where we do need it. And because as John mentioned, we've talked about that, you know, the hospital has made many acquisitions in the last, you know, what started 20 years ago is completely different today.
It is.
So it just needs to be assessed every single year.
And it allows the
and how we do
hospital
that.
to adapt though also, because healthcare changes.
I understand
all the
that.
time.
Yep, I understand that.
It really does. And to compete against the others and to be able to provide the services that they're able to provide here locally, they've got to be able to adapt and change.
So is that what you're saying, that if, say, a Parkview acquired Adams Memorial, that you're saying that there wouldn't be services that currently are provided here, they would only be provided maybe in Fort Wayne?
I think they refer to it as the mothership. But they move their services like that up to there. So a lot of the services that are handled in local hospitals normally they're not. And there's also a pretty drastic reduction in workforce. Because again, they pull those folks out. So,
I have a couple of questions.
yeah.
This 888 employees, is that including the physician practices that were absorbed?
Yes, that would include those.
And you said 2/3 of them are in Adams County?
Yes.
How many other facilities do you operate by way of management and/or employment?
By employment, none, other than the 2 nursing homes that we own. Those are the only 2 that we have any employees at.
So the other third of people are in Monroeville.
That we have doctors that live up in Fort Wayne that come down here. We have people that live in Ohio that come across the line, and people live in Wells County, Jay County that work at our hospital.
And I know independent CPAs are hired because of rate review and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
Why would you report your figures by an audit to a public site and not provide that same information to council, for example? Could it be?
I mean,
You provide your figures to Gateway, if I
Yes.
understood correctly. Can't that,
you guys can get on that and see that though, can't you?
but why can't that be provided to us by way of paper, electronic media, or whatever you want? I think that would clear up a lot of the confusion or concerns that we have. And I don't think the average person can appreciate what we have, so we surely don't want to lose it. And in my years of hospital experience. It's unique business. You can't compare it to anything else, and so you just have to take it on the merit of the people that are running it, the integrity and honesty.
It's not, I will say, it's not only the county. I've spoke to several city officials that have the same concerns. And I just think, there needs to be some accountability to where we can work together, where it's not always just the county, ponying up the money. And if there's times when they don't need it, we have needs for it in the county. So that's I think the biggest thing that any of us are saying is, right now it seems like very much a one-way street.
I disagree with you completely, but
And
I think the hospital provides a great benefit to this community. And to say that that's a one-way street for what the hospital is providing. I mean, think about the taxes that you're getting off the payroll that's coming off the hospital, all the things that the hospital does within the community. So I just think that that's not a fair representation that it's a one-way street, especially when this is what was agreed to when this all started.
Just clarification, the city's also paying a portion of CETA monies into that same thing. That happened back in 2001 also as part of that agreement. I think I'm correct. Am I correct in that, gentlemen?
You're correct.
Yeah, so it was the Adams County Income Tax Council by statute. Every county has an income tax council. They don't convene very often. The only time that a county income tax council convenes is for the purpose of determining whether or not to institute a tax or to reduce or repeal a tax. And so in 2001, when construction of the new hospital was being discussed, the county was looking at, ways to pay for it. And one of the ways to pay for it would have been property tax. It could have been paid for by property tax, and it was felt at the time that the county did not want to increase property tax for that project. And so they looked at other funding sources, and the only other source that made sense was economic development revenues. And so the county looked at the project as economic development to keep jobs, stabilize jobs, and hopefully have growth in healthcare for Adams County. And so the Income Tax Council advertises, and they met. The county council, I think, had 54% of the votes. The county council acted first, but by statute, the only way to pass that tax, it requires all of the other cities and towns and units in the county also have to convene, and because they are members of the Income Tax Council. The Income Tax Council is made up of the county council and then the fiscal bodies of each city and town. And so there, like we said, there were meetings, and that was a very difficult process. There were a lot of questions and a lot of thought went into it. And so City of Bern, Geneva, Monroe, Decatur, all of them agreed and passed similar resolutions at the time, pledging their increase, their 0.2% increase that otherwise would have gone to the cities and towns, pledge that money towards the bond issue for the construction of the new hospital. Without that pledge, that project, it wouldn't have been done. It had to be, it was an all or none proposition. Either everybody was going to be in support of building the hospital or not. And so that was done. Everybody pledged their 0.2% increase and seated. Back at that time, it was called seated, County Economic Development Income Tax. Now, it's all just lumped under LIT, local income tax. But as a practical matter, it's still there. There's still 0.4% in economic development revenues. 0.2% goes to the county. The other 0.2% goes to the cities and towns still to this day. But the incremental increase, that 0.2% that the county passed for the hospital and the cities and towns passed for the hospital, that automatically, it was irrevocably pledged as part of the bond issue, that automatically, when it comes into the county, gets paid over to the escrow agent for the bonds, and then they pay the bonds. And so there's really no way to shut it off until the bonds are paid off. Once the bonds are paid off, the nature of the way that tax was instituted, and that was a decision by the Income Tax Council, that 0.2% falls off, not just for the county, but for everybody. It falls off. And so the Income Tax Council would have to convene again and could increase it or reinstitute it, and then those revenues would come to the county and the cities and towns. As far as, trying to divert those funds, I don't know that there's any way to do that. There'd have to be some other financial mechanism to do that internally, I suppose, through the hospital. But as far as how those payments are made, you have to make the payments the way the bond issue is set up until the bonds are paid off. So not to say that there couldn't be, discussions between, the county and hospital about some other ways of recapturing some of that money somehow. I don't know, but certainly we would have to talk to Indiana Bond Bank and make sure that there was a way to do that. But just from a collection standpoint, that's how it goes. It goes direct.
And twice in the last few years, the hospital board did vote to pay $500,000 back in CEDA funds. I mean, it wasn't CEDA funds, but out of hospital revenue because they were better years. And so those monies came back, were divided equally based upon your percentages of the city and the county. So each city, town, and the county each received their respective share of that $500,000, and that happened 2 different times.
And as we dig into all of this and sort of figure it all out, just so I understand the roles here, so you represent the hospital, is that right?
I do.
Okay, and then Mark, you represent the commissioners and Julie represents the council, is that right?
Right. But back when all this happened, Mark and I was representing the hospital, he was representing the county. So we're both here just because of the familiarity with how the project was all begun.
So if we start to go down one of these directions and get a little bit more involved, do you guys feel that you can keep that sort of, because that's a conflict really, if we're adverse to each other here, how do you think you guys can handle that? If council wants to go one direction, commissioners maybe agree, maybe don't, hospital's never going to want this, obviously. How do we make sure we can work that out?
Then you may have to pay for separate counsel. But, I've never seen this as an adversarial relationship. I don't think it's ever been adversarial. In fact, it's been cooperative. It was cooperative from the beginning. And obviously, over time, there is changes take place, and you have, council people come and go, and people come and go on city council, and mayors change, and commissioners change. That's natural. And so I have no doubt everybody's got questions and wonders, how did this get put in place, and
I think that's
why.
what we're asking is, I certainly didn't know that this was voted on in 2001 to just pay the bond issue. We had no idea that that's where this money was going. I didn't. Did anybody else know that this, we just saw it as it was going to the hospital, that this was money that every year we sent to the hospital. So just a clarification on this helps.
And I understand that, Keith, because, and it's just, to me, it seems like it was yesterday, but it was 20 years ago. And, members change. I don't think there's anybody on this board that was on it 20 years. And Dennis, you weren't on it 20 years ago when that happened, was it? No. No, we've refinanced it twice since then. But even in those, there's been a lot of changes. Even when we refinanced it last year, I think there's 4 new members on this board. So, it's a lot of turnover where people wouldn't know that because they weren't part of that. Didn't see it happening, so.
Yeah, and I think that's just where we were going with this, is just wondering, hey,
And I want you to know, anybody that has questions, if they want to call me, if you want to go out and talk to somebody at the hospital, that's fine too, so.
I think it'd be really helpful. Like you said, we're just trying to get our heads wrapped around it. What's going on here? What's historically happened? What's the financial state of the hospital? I don't know if there's a way that we can figure out, can we sign non-disclosure agreements and can like just the councils, I mean, I know commissioners have the ability to get in there, but just be good to know. I don't think any of us want to go share that with the whole world, but as we're making these decisions, it'd be really helpful to know. You know, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I don't have a problem signing something like that just so that we can know what's going on as we make these decisions and try at the same time respect their privacy issues with not wanting to get, you know, cherry picked off by another hospital just by nature of us asking questions.
Well, let me ask you this then, because we do have a county commissioner that sits in on our board meetings every month in the hospital too, in addition to the commissioners coming in, and would it be a possibility of one of the council members coming in to maybe put everybody at ease that?
It would for me, at least. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
I mean, I think it'd be nice to have some representation, for sure.
And I'm gonna run everything by the board, of course, but I'm just trying to come up with something that would put your minds at ease.
Adam, when you came before us last year with the bond refinancing, you provided us with like a breakdown of how many months and who was paying what, and I noticed that at that time that the county's portion of their payment was always the same, but the hospital's was decreasing over time. So we were still paying the same, but the hospital was paying less and less and less and less. And maybe I should have asked last year, but why is that?
You're not paying the same, you're just paying that 0.2%. Whatever that is, that's what goes in, because that's the way that it was pledged for the bonds. And so part of this was part of the refinancing was, like I said, did not extend out the payments at all. On either one of the refinancings, never was it extended longer. It was to help to free up cash for the hospital, to be honest with you, so that we could do some of the things that they're doing to help adapt and stay current and provide the best care for people here in our county. So that's, the whole reason of refinancing, and it's been substantial savings on the refinancing. I think the latest interest rates, like, don't hold me to this, but I think it was 1.25% on those bonds. So, it was a substantial savings from back when we first did this. And of course, there have been rough roads over the past. Hospital was built back in 2003, 4, and 5. It opened up. In 2008, we had the recession that was devastating. And you can go back and look at your seated dollars. They tanked, and it took years for those to come back up to what they were before. And so the hospital picked up a greater amount back at that point in time because those seated dollars went down so much. So it is a give and take as the economy goes up and down.
So the bond will be paid off in 10 years, you say?
I think it's January 1 of 2031. I think that's the final payment date. The bonds were issued back in 2002, but the first payment didn't start, I think, until maybe it was January 1 of 2003. And part of that was to make sure that we got the place built and people coming in and out, and the revenues coming in.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lag in time between, because it was 2001 when the Income Tax Council voted, but that was before the hospital was built. So obviously they didn't have any revenues. So there was a period of time between the hospital was finally built and then started to have revenues, and then the debt service started. So.
Does council have any other questions?
I think this is helpful for me, just knowing that that's where and why, so.
I don't have any more right now.
Adam, are you going to get back to us then to see about possibly a council member?
I guess, I'm not sure, is that what council wants?
Is that what council
I don't know that
wants?
I got a clear answer
Yeah.
request on that, so.
I think the consensus is yes.
Okay.
And I think to the extent that, in the cities and towns have questions about it, like you said, there's been turnover and there's been change, and I think maybe we could communicate some of the same information to them so that they're aware, but that's
Probably be a good idea.
historically, that's how that happened and that's how it was put in place, because I gotta be honest, that was a monumental project. it was to get all the cities and towns and the county to agree. I think it was a testament to the entire county working together, and they did, for that project, and nothing like it's happened since. And it's hard to get everybody to get on board with something like that, but that's how it happened, and that's why it's still in place, and everybody's incremental share goes towards those payments. But I think it would be helpful to probably have communication with the cities and towns as well, because a lot's happened. That's 20 years ago. Lots happened.
Adam, when is the next board meeting
We have a board meeting on the 27th
of this month?
of this month,
So possibly next month, would you be able to say yay or nay
possibly.
and get something back to us? Okay. So should we put you on the agenda for next month?
That would be fine, or if you want, I can just let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, does that work for council?
Yep.
Okay, any further questions for Adam or Mark?
And if anybody has any specific questions and they want to call me or come in and see me, I'd be happy at any time, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, thank you, gentlemen.
Adam.
Yeah.
You say 888 or 800?
Nope.
Also, the two nursing homes before transfer.
Adam's here.
There used to be, I don't see it anymore. Okay, next on the agenda. Tony, did we go through all the additionals for you?
No, there's a couple, and there's some transfers, but if you want to wait till auditor report,
Can I get some order, please? Thank you.
don't unpress, come on.
Tony, what, any more additionals for the council?
Yes.
Okay,
We have community corrections still and adult probation services. The Bowen Center, Project Sunrise, I think is a new, I think they came a few months ago to Commissioners and Council to discuss that. Bowen Center is also who they work with mental health, and my guess is they are just experiencing more need for that than what they expected. So they are seeking those additionals.
and these are out of their project income?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the old, what was the project?
Drug court.
Drug court. Another grant money.
And this is getting clients in front of therapists within days instead of weeks to a month.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
Fred made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
John? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And the only other additional was adult probation services. Read what other insurances?
Is this for the deferred comp? Because it seems like they come before us every year wanting the
I
same.
think
Yeah,
so.
because they reimburse the county for the person that gets paid out of the grant.
Right. So,
Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Fred, do I have a second?
Second.
John? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And then I think it's transfers next.
transfers, we have several. Should have gotten those hopefully. Do you want to do them all at once? Do you want to do it separate? Several of them.
They're just all transfers, right?
Just transfers, you got circuit court,
I'll motion to
jail.
approve all of them.
Okay.
Second.
Corey made the motion, Fred seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
The only other thing I had is salary ordinances, which,
We have those somewhere, yeah.
yeah, and these, should have already been discussed by the council previously. It's just a matter of record to prove them, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that's sir, it's because there's a new employee. We had to lower it down to what it should be. Called a Meadows, the same thing, no employee. Public defender is no employee to that office. It was a transfer from another
They
department.
Went from one
And
department
then
to
the
that.
jail is a new jailer.
So, yeah, new employees.
Do I have a motion?
Stuff it's what we already talked about, right?
I think so, yeah.
Motion to accept.
Fred and Keith? Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
These guys, all three of these are on this same paper clip, so sign 3. Please.
That's all you have? Julie Marie, did you have anything else that you want to report? And I do have some questions for you. You're done.
No, I have nothing else, thank you.
Okay, so Tony and I have been talking, I think Tony was talking to Stan as well, concerning possibly establishing an ARPA committee with the council and the commissioners. What do you think about doing that?
That'd be fine as long as we don't end up with a quorum for anybody.
And then Tony had talked about creating a form.
I think Stan actually had, I can't remember who first came up with the idea of a request form for ARPA, but at some point,
So it depends, if it was
Somebody
a
did.
good idea, I thought of it. But no, I was looking for an organized way to address requests to use that American Rescue Plan money that could be, if it came to be audited, it would be able to reconcile the request as it compares to the parameters of the ARP money. And I thought that way, it'd be kind of just an organized way to approach it.
because basically it's anybody,
I don't have a form, but
I think we need to create one.
somehow
Tony and I can create a form and send that out for everybody.
I think if it allows people, organizations, whatever, to submit a request and justify their request, and they would submit it to the commissioners, and we could review it, and if it were approved, could be submitted for appropriation. Or not. So
If it has
that's
the-
been my,
If it has the criteria on it, you'll know if it can be rejected out of hand. And it won't have to bog anybody's time because, the commissioners can come up with this plan, but then the council has to approve it. So it makes sense that they work together to get it accomplished, I would think.
So I'm seeing other counties have established a working committee between the council and the commissioners, and they're working together so that everyone's informed. And I think that would be helpful, just like with there were questions today concerning the appropriation. We weren't aware of what was going on. So it'd be nice to have, is anyone on the council wanting to be on this committee?
Like you couldn't have, you only have to have a certain number, I guess. Could have a quorum. You have up to 3?
Yeah.
Or 1 or 2, however you want to do it.
Maybe this is something that we want to discuss.
As long as the meetings aren't during a day.
Okay.
hey, Jill and Marie, can I ask a quick question? How do you see the process? Do you see it as coming through the commissioners first and then to council for appropriation?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's the way it's
Is Mark,
supposed
is
to go.
that kind of your thought?
So I guess we'll have to decide kind of big picture if we want to do, I think soliciting all those requests is a good idea, but we kind of need to decide our strategy. Are we wanting to basically spend it on a lot of little projects, or we want to try and do something really big with it? Because there's another distribution coming yet too, right?
We're getting another 3.4 million next year. You have until the end of 2024 to come up with a plan You have until the end of 2026 to spend it all. And as of right now, and Julie Marie has been looking into this as well, the final interim rule, which isn't actually final yet, I don't know why they call it that, but you have to show how it's related to COVID and the mitigation of the spread of COVID and so forth. It has to be directly related to those things. Now, who's to say in a year from now, 2 years from now, they might relax that? It's just unknown. But right now, anything that I submit, and I'm the one that has to submit it because it's my name on the thing that goes to the Treasury Department, we have to, for example, a generator, we'll have to have written up the scope of this project and how it is related to the spread of COVID and so forth, and that has to be submitted with the amount of money and so forth, so it's a process right now. But as of right now, it's kind of tied into that. It might change later, you just don't know. I mean, I definitely think commissioners and council can work together on a plan they're looking at. I do know the state is talking about spending statewide a lot of money on broadband. So it might make sense to wait a little bit on that, see what the state does before we put a lot into it if the state's gonna do it. I don't think there's any need to rush. The things that we're doing now, I think are necessary now. Other things I think can probably wait because we're getting interest on that money. And we'll get another drop next year, so there's no big rush. Just my 2 cents.
The interim final rule was supposed to come out in September and it didn't come out. So I would expect that it will come out any time and it may change the parameters that we have in place right now, which may significantly impact how the council and commissioners want to spend the money and what we can spend it on.
Yeah. They're hearing back from a lot of counties and states, and as they're hearing back, they're figuring out what they might need to change, so.
I would just want to be careful that we don't accidentally kind of nickel and dime it, spend a bunch of little things, and then all of a sudden you don't have enough, it limits your options, inadvertently. So I would just want to kind of make sure, even if it's going through that approval process, that we're still keeping our options open.
Okay, so if anyone's interested on being part of that committee, please let me know and we'll try to figure out something. Okay. Shannon, did you have some stuff that you wanted to talk about with us?
So I didn't print anything this time, I hope that's okay. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is the wage package proposal that I sent to you guys on September 30th. This had one final update in it from Julie Marie about elected officials, and the language just basically reflects what the law says in regards to wages for elected officials. And there was a couple of other things that I wanted to get your opinion on that I listed in that email. So the first email was on Thursday, September 16th, that has my little list in it, and then Julie Marie responded, and then I sent her updates again on September 30th. So do you guys all have that available by chance?
Is that the same one that I emailed you on?
Yes. And I can send it again if I need to.
Were you going to clarify, what was it, Part G that I had questions on?
Yes. Yes. So just to run through that list really quick that I sent you guys back on September 16th. Our current calculation applies to part-time employees, that they are eligible for the increases offered by council but not adjustments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We talked about date of hire. We added that in. The next one I can skip because I just need to do a form for it.
and you guys are all in agreement with the specific calculation for increases, which is base plus increase then plus adjustments, which equals the new base rate for the following year.
Yep.
Yes, okay. And then the last thing on that is section 6G. I added in a paragraph that discusses in the event that the council votes to reclassify a position, the wage change will be retroactive to the beginning of the closest pay period to the date that the job duties and responsibilities were changed. I'm recommending that we make that date the effective date that the commissioners actually approved the job description instead of when the duties were taken over. I think that I need to be more proactive in getting the stuff in front of you guys sooner instead of letting it drag on for 7, 8, 9 months before we get some changes made. And that way there's no, conflict of, well, when did you actually start the duties versus when did you say you started the duties versus when did the commissioners change it? So we'll just make it the date, the pay will be retroactive to the date that the commissioners change the job description, if there's a job description change.
Yeah, I mean, that could be 3 weeks, so it's probably best that it gets
Right.
done.
And I mean that, if we have to go through wage review at that point, which we most likely will, then it could be even longer than 3 weeks, just depending on when that committee can get together. So it gives the benefits to the employee, but it doesn't leave the county open to liability of making this huge 9-month payment, in the event that somebody's been doing something for that long.
So you have changed this to say the date the commissioners signed the.
No, I think
approve
that
the-
that it reads to understand that way as reflected in the updated job description, which that to me means that the date that the commissioners make that change. I can change it if that would make you guys feel more comfortable.
So on the job description, does it state on there like date of last review and then you can plug in the date that the commissioners approved it?
Yeah, I think it says last HR review, which I could just make that date reflective of the actual day that they approve it in their meeting. Okay, if that works for everybody. And then just the last thing was that I did update the language under section 8A for elected officials based on what Julie Marie gave me from what the statute says. Do we have any questions?
I think this is going to be really helpful having everything all in one place like this. Kind of got scattered all over as we were making all the changes the last couple of years. So this is going to be really helpful, I think.
Do we want to vote on this?
Does it require a vote? Is it administrative responsibility?
What do you think,
I
Julie
think
Marie?
we should vote on it.
Oh, to adopt it, yes, you should vote on it, sorry.
That's what I was thinking, but
Make a motion to accept.
Fred made a motion.
Second.
Kathy seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Shannon. Looks
Good
good.
job, Shannon.
Thank you. Thanks for your help. So now I want to bring Mark up for today, not to only introduce him, but to talk about my next item as well. So this is Mark Blankenship. He is the new administrator at Golden Meadows. I know that he hasn't had an opportunity to meet you guys yet, so just wanted to introduce him. And then I did send you guys an email. It was on 9:30 as well. Apparently that was a big day for me. I wanted to talk about the wages for the CNAs out at Golden Meadows. When I first started, I did some research about different wages that different counties offered, and I did some national and state research as well. And I'm finding that we are significantly lower for our CNA wages than other counties and other occupations within the area. Some of the data that I've pulled, I do not think takes into consideration the current hiring climate, so I want us to keep that in mind as well. As a general statement, we receive maybe 1, maybe 2, if we're super lucky, applications when we post a nursing assistant job because of the wage is so low right now. So what I'm asking you guys is to take into consideration moving this position from an NE2 to an NE3. However, I do believe that I could make a strong case based on this wage data and our current descriptions and factors that the certified position could go to a 4, but the nursing assistant without certification could stay at a 3.
What is that certification process? Like, how hard is it to get certified?
It typically takes about 1,000 hours, 1,000 to 1,200 hours total. So I mean, I know that it can take, 6 to 8 months, depends on, the person and how invested they are, if they do it part-time, full-time. But overall, the whole certification takes about 1,000 to 1,200 hours.
So if you don't have that, are you not called a CNA, or are you called something else?
You're just a nursing assistant. You're not a certified nursing assistant.
So is this going to change the salary ordinance that we just approved?
The salary ordinance that you guys just approved is for 2022, is that right? So I would have to get a new salary ordinance out to you guys for next month. But we could wait to make these changes until I could get the 144s and everything out to you guys. I just at least want to have the discussion, because we're kind of in a constant pinch. I mean, I don't think that I'm ever going to find someone for an NE2 rate when the next job below says $17, $18 an hour. It's just not, it's not going to happen. So
How many CNAs are there?
6 full-time.
How do those wages compare to the hospital, for example, or the nursing home?
I didn't actually compare it to the hospital specifically, but I did reach out to Adams Woodcrest, and their starting wage for a CNA, which is certified, is $15 an hour.
15, and you're suggesting 17?
No, I'm suggesting, so right now, our current CNA wage is $12.55, which is an NE2 rate. I'm suggesting that we either move that position to an NE3, or we move the CNA to an NE4, and all nursing assistants without the certification are an NE3, and that's $13.97 and $15.51. So I do know that if we move to the $15.51 for certified, we would be a little bit over what the competing, county homes and national and state data says. I mean, however, I really believe that this is going to continue to go up, that other organizations around us are going to continue to pay more and more and more because of the demand for medical staff is so high right now. It always has been, and we all know that COVID has not helped that at all.
So I can tell you from my perspective, I've only been there a month and a half now. It's been a real challenge, personnel-wise, which I'm sure, hopefully, most of you already know this, but we've lost our nursing director since I've been there. We've also lost one of our night shift coverage medical assistants, and it's been very hard to get those positions replaced, and that hurts us a couple ways, really. It's puts a lot of stress on the added duties and responsibilities that our current staff has. So we've got people that are picking up extra hours, practically every week, just to keep us at that minimum coverage that we have to provide. So we understand that our overtime is probably going up because of that, but the impact that it's having on our current personnel has been very detrimental, in my opinion. And that's going to just continue as long as this salary is at the lower level. When we can't even compete and get, a low-level person in there because they can go down the road and make $2, $3 more an hour, why would they apply, to work for us? So that's our challenge right now. So we would appreciate anything that you could do to help us out with our current problem of staffing. So.
What is the dollar amount that this would change your budget, or their budget?
And do these positions have benefits, I'm assuming?
The 6 full-time CNAs do, yes. However, we have a handful of part-time nursing assistants and CNAs on staff as well, and they are not eligible for benefits, as we know. So it just depends on whether they're full-time or part-time. I had that at one point. Let me find it.
I just wish we would have discussed this at budget time, because we've already just approved the budget for next year, and now this is screwing up the budget
Right. I mean, this.
within 2 hours of us adopting the budget.
Right. No, I completely understand. It's just that, I mean, we didn't think that, I don't have a good answer for that, to be honest. It's something that's kind of been on my radar for the last couple of months. It's just I haven't had an opportunity to bring it up. It didn't occur to me, to be honest, to bring it up at budget time. But I do believe that it is a point of crisis for us at this point. So the total change, assuming that we would go to $13.97, is that we have, make sure I get this right. So our part-time nursing assistants who are not certified are currently classified as an NE1. I misspoke on that, which is $11.30 per hour. Our certified nursing assistants are classified as an NE2. However, with the adjustments and things like that they've had, some of their rates are a little bit higher. So if they were higher than the, what did I do here? I'm sorry. I should have reviewed this before I came in. Oh, I see. Okay. So if they were not a certified nursing assistant and we elected to keep that at the $12.55, then those people would be grandfathered into their current wage. But if we elected to move the certified nursing assistants to $13.97, including the part-time certified, we'd have an overall budget change for at least this year of $19,468.80.
And that's just wages, that doesn't include perf.
Correct.
Do we have enough in the perf, in the commissioner's line item to even support this change, or is that also gonna change the commissioner's budget now? Or next year?
There was about 10,000 cushion.
We're trying to keep it as trim as possible, so we didn't go overboard.
And again, this 19.4 is assuming that the part-time, not certified goes to an NE2, all part-time goes to NE2, not certified, and then all certified goes to NE3.
And that's the positions have to be filled for it to even meet that.
I'm sorry?
The positions would have to be filled for it to be that much more,
Right, right.
which they're not, right? There's at least
There's
one.
one full-time opening right now. And I think there's maybe 2 part-time, maybe.
This might be an unfair question, but how many self-pay people do you have out there?
Are you referring to who has ARCH funding and who doesn't?
Yes.
I think that most of the residents, if I had to give you a guess, 80 to 85% of them are on ARCH funding.
And so when's the last time you raised wage or prices out there for that, for the private pay?
Got 11 of the 26 are ARCH funded. So what was your follow-up question?
When's the last time you raised room and board, for example?
Month and a half, I don't think I can answer that one yet.
That's what I said, it's an unfair question, but I
That's a
think
good, yeah.
We'd have to
these
find
are,
out.
these are things I would like to know.
Okay.
Because there was considerable amount of money that came into the county general by way of that source of funding. And might be an answer to offsetting some of these costs.
I'm gonna send an email right now. I don't know if I'll get an answer, but we'll see. Yeah, I would absolutely be interested to know. I didn't think about that. So that's kind of why I'm here, is to talk about this and get some more ideas of, what I can do to bring you more information that would be willing to get you guys willing to make a decision on this. So I will find out the answer to that. Is there anything else that's kind of unanswered that we can get answered for you guys if I were to able to get that and come back next month?
So what's your specific request?
My specific request is that we go from an NE2 for a certified CNA to an NE4. And then for a non-certified, which is currently an NE1, if they are part-time, go to an NE3, which would be from $11.30 to $13.97 and $12.55 to $15.51. However, if that's too much and you guys aren't willing to accept that right now, then I would be happy with at least getting everybody to a $13.97 certified or not.
Moving everybody to an NE3, you mean?
Yeah. Regardless of whether they're certified.
And right now they're ones.
And twos. Yes. I mean, I think you guys all know that, when they're paying $15, $16 an hour at the fast food restaurants and $17, $18 an hour at Walmart with amazing benefits, why would you sign up? And I hate to say it like this, but why would you necessarily sign up to take care of someone else for that rate. And I know that historically speaking, it's not an Adams County thing. It's a national thing and it's a state thing that type of position has paid less. But with what we're competing against right now and how all the other entities around us are raising wages, I think we really need to take it into consideration.
Honestly, I agree with you. I think those need to be bumped up slightly. What that looks like, I guess it will depend on what everybody votes on, but.
So is there any other information that we can collect for you guys if I were to come back next month? I know we had I wanted to start the conversation today, but is there anything else other than the last time we raised room and board and what our arch funding looks like that I can get answered?
So does council want to
I
vote?
do have one question. Do we know what the total package is for, these other areas that you compared the wages with as far as benefits and everything else? What that combined per hour would be versus just straight the pay?
Right. No, I don't, but I can absolutely find out. It's similar to what I did for you guys with the court staff during budget hearings. I can find that out if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I would just be curious to see if the total comp, when you factor in all the benefits, what that would be compared to, the other counties that I'm just thinking that if our benefits are so good but all anybody looks at is what my hourly rate is, do we need to adjust what our benefits are and pay more per hour versus in health benefits?
We kind of touched on that during budget hearings last month, and I'm of the opinion that we don't necessarily need to adjust our benefits because we have great benefits and that is a factor. It's less of a factor than I think that you guys would like it to be, and I'm working on helping people understand how great our benefits are through education and learning. But I do think that we at least need to look at our benefits and say, are we getting the most bang for our buck? And
Well, I
that
do
is,
too, because I think somebody that's 22 years old is going to look at benefits a lot differently than somebody 22 and single is going to look at those a lot differently than somebody that's 35 with 2 kids and a spouse.
I agree, and I think that's where, when I'm doing orientation with a new employee, my job kind of comes into play because I do understand enough about our benefits package and how special it is and how great it is to convey that information and convey that that awesomeness to those employees. And then they're like, oh, okay, they start to understand more.
Well, and the reason why I bring it up is I know Sheriff was talking about losing employees all the time going even outside the law enforcement because they're getting paid more per hour. And even though their benefits aren't as good because they're just looking strictly at the hourly rate.
Right.
And I think that's something that, if that's the case, maybe that's something we need to adjust.
Because you can work on that with the current employees, educating them.
Right.
But in terms of recruiting, you're not going to educate a recruit, about why the benefit is worth more. They just won't apply.
Right.
Which is why you get one applicant, right, for the position that's posted. So
Because when the next job on the list of jobs for CNA says $17 an hour.
exactly,
there's
they're
no
not going to
contest.
they're not going to dig into that. They won't even consider it.
Right. But again, I am absolutely not vouching for adjusting the benefits. I'm saying that we need to look at the cost of our benefits and make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck is what I'm advocating for. So other than the 2 questions, is there anything else that you guys want me to find out?
So if you're going to compare, as Keith has asked you to do, because there aren't very many homes in counties anymore. What is there, like 5 in the state? Okay. So how are you going to give us an apples to apples comparison?
Well, I took county homes, but I also took, the only one I was able to get in this time frame was Adams Woodcrest, but I can do a parameter search of this area in addition to county homes when I look at wages versus benefits, because I can't understand that, Clinton County or Tippecanoe County isn't necessarily going to compare to what we have here in Adams County, but we are absolutely losing people to Woodcrest and to the VA hospital and to some of those other places. So I can just expand my search to include county homes, but also for a distance of Adams County as well. Anything else? Okay, I will do my homework and I will be back next month.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so you'll be on the agenda for next month?
Yes.
Perfect. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss with us today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. It seemed like there was a list of things, and I wanted to make sure we covered everything.
No,
before
just
we
wage
moved on.
package and that, so, but I've got my marching orders. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Julie Marie, you said you didn't have anything else, right? Okay. Barry, I think you wanted to discuss something briefly.
Just 2 minutes. Went down, everybody sees the sign on the wall. We got down at the AIC. We got the award for the county, and it was very well represented from the county. We had a commissioner, had a few other elected officials from the county. It went well. I think we got a good bang for our buck there. Very respectful for you guys and letting us be here to work with you. The other thing, just to let you know, is we received half of our money. We received $5 million. So we haven't borrowed any yet, but we are at least covered to pay your money back. We will borrow when we borrow it from you. Hopefully, they're telling us they still want us to close on this grant. We're waiting on the other $5 million to come. We're hoping we hear this week. We've been saying that for the last 3. So, but you will get paid back at least this year on what we borrow from you. So everything's going good. I'll let you guys go. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, thanks.
Tony, was there anybody else that you were aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are there any other matters that need to come before council?
Don't look at me that way. Kind of looking ahead a little bit, as we had our technology committee meeting the other day, there's gonna be some equipment that's gonna have to be replaced in the next couple of years. So I guess, one of the things that we would encourage, I know John has been coming in and sitting in our meetings, when he can. But hopefully as we look ahead, we're gonna kind of look at, just a real brief history of where our system is now as compared to where it was, and the things that we need to do that are coming up, and kind of help, as you plan budgets for the next couple of years, kind of see how it all fits together. So, we may be trying to put together, for lack of a better term, kind of an information session or whatever to see what our system is and what might be coming up as far as replacing servers and storage and stuff like that. So anyway, there's nothing, but we just did start a brief conversation last Thursday. So I guess the thing I'd really like to encourage is any participation from council, and like I say, John has been coming when he can, is just a huge benefit to help keep everybody informed and look ahead. So.
And when are these meetings again?
Can you be there or?
Thursdays.
Actually, if anybody from council would like to come up, we meet about every Thursday at 8:30.
So is there any type of plan going forward because right now it just seems like we still don't have an idea or a grasp of what we're doing going forward as far as, some type of schedule to replace equipment or what we're doing.
Well,
I mean, the budget is, because
That's an excellent point, because
we also, hold on a second though, we also know that there's money that gets thrown into IT from some, like a cume cap fund that doesn't even pass through us.
Right.
So it'd really be really nice to know what we're doing going forward and have an idea of what our true expenses are gonna be.
Yeah, like I say, that's an excellent point, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we talked about having an information meeting, to look at what we have. I mean, we've made some decisions. For one, we've made a decision to go to the VDI system, which is virtual desktop interface, and that is for all of our county employees. So that was an investment. We've made a commitment to basically keep the county technology in this building. And so we've invested a lot of money in an adequate server room and the UPSs, the DMARC room upstairs, the updates at the sheriff's department. So, you know, we've made a commitment to really reinforce the system here. So that's been an investment for us in all the recabling, Superior Court, Circuit Court, and Highway Department. So,
Don't we also provide a lot of IT services and essentially equipment as well for Decatur, Byrne,
yeah.
Monroe?
So we've
And I
got
just wonder,
multiple-
are they, you know, honestly, I feel like we're providing a lot of that for them at little to no cost.
We've got multiple interlocal agreements, and what Mike Brown has done is to track the direct expenses as they're related to what's being provided as far as licensing for emails, licensing for software, any equipment, you know, those are things that are billed. The thing that we do not bill those other entities for typically is labor. So if we're giving anything away, our technology.
Labor is typically the most expensive component, honestly.
But, you know, as far as the cost, the actual cost for internet services and everything else is actually reimbursed, and Bree has created a line item to help us track that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're able, it does come back into county general, even though it's paid out through the IT budget. But yet it is tracked, and so we do know how much is actually billed and how much comes in. But we do that through Decatur and Byrne, PD, and Geneva. And, you know, it's been a real good cooperative effort for our officers and for our governments. And so, but yeah, you're right, we do provide a lot of services.
I think those XLS or those Excel spreadsheets were given to the council maybe at the last meeting that detailed the cost that's being recovered from cities and towns, but you know, we'll have the IT committee can address that again and see if there's any additional costs that we're incurring that could be passed along in future agreements. But I think those spreadsheets were given to the council maybe last meeting. But Mike Brown spent a considerable amount of time making sure that he was tracking all the expense that's connected to software and services and security services provided through county network to cities and towns. I think it's about $70,000 or $79,000 per year that we're getting back from cities and towns to cover the cost.
Which that's not very much compared to the entire IT budget. That's pennies.
Well, at this point, in my opinion, I consider IT very much part of our infrastructure because it affects every single department in the whole county. And so, you know, we've addressed some real critical things, and one was email and licensing and you know, we've addressed the anti-malware and all that as far as additional firewalls. And ransomware, we've addressed with additional off-site storage so that, you know, our risk is as low as it can be and our recovery time is as short as it can. So those are two things that are just real critical to maintaining all the legal records we have through the courts, the clerk, the prosecutor, through everybody that we have a statutory responsibility to. So I think the integrity of our system has just come incredibly far, you know, under this leadership. So, but you know, that's why as we look ahead, Mike says, hey, we're gonna have to start replacing some of these servers, and that's gonna be a big cost. That's where we wanna kind of have make sure that everybody's informed over the next couple of years to help. Like Fred says, to develop a plan. That's an excellent idea.
Fred, do you have any other questions for? Okay, thank you, Stan. All right, we're at almost 11 o'clock. Does the council have anything else that they want to discuss?
I just want to comment on Corey's remarks about the budget at the beginning. I guess I was taken back initially, I didn't have any sort of rebuttal. Yeah, regarding the comments of the budget going up $20 million in, what you said, 10 years or so, whatever it was, arbitrary. But, the cost of goods and services have went up, every year too. We're not going to pay less in salaries every year. We're not going to pay less in
Goods.
building materials or road materials. IT, there's more and more infrastructure for the IT. There's new servers and licensing agreements, and new software has to be updated. Price of milk is not going down. It always goes up. Bread does not go down. It goes up. Everything goes up. We're adding more personnel to departments. We're paving roads. We're not making new roads, but we're turning stone roads into paved roads. There's always more that needs done than the year before. And that's progress. We're using the rates given us by the state, their recommendation. So I think we're not in any position, the county is not going to be bankrupt by the rates that we're using and have been suggested. We could lower them, yes, but there's things that will have to be reduced. Personnel will have to be reduced, the amount of services, the roads, the ditches, the culverts, the bridges will have to be not maintained, not improved, not built. There will have to be reductions in anything that we offer if we take anything less than what is recommended by the state. Property values, the income does come from that, and I think, county assessed at $13 billion worth of property value. So we're going to gain revenue, and it would be not a wise decision to turn that money away. We're not essentially raising taxes. In my mind, we're maintaining taxes. We're maintaining our lifestyle as a county. I don't see it as raising. I guess that's all.
We haven't spent into the red, and honestly, several of the things you're talking to are also, they're funded by grants, which if we don't have the grant, we don't spend. But if we have it, we spend it. So again, you can make numbers say what you want to say and interpret them how you want to interpret them. But there are always things to be concerned about, and we are working on addressing those. But to put it in the dire straits that you are projecting to everybody is not correct.
I'd be happy to respond to those. First, on the dire straits thing, I'm not saying that the county's going to go under tomorrow. I am saying that we need a plan, and I don't think numbers, you can make numbers say whatever you want, but the numbers I'm talking about are the bare basics. It's income minus revenue, it's property tax rate. You don't cherry pick those are the bare bone basics. You're talking about prices of goods going up. That's a good point. But over those 10 years, inflation only went up 19%. We've increased our budget by 83. So you've got 64% more than inflation. So you're right, inflation accounts for 19 out of 83. You got a lot more that we got to deal with. Property values, you mentioned those. I mentioned it earlier, but I'll say it again. Any of these numbers I talked about with increased tax dollars has nothing to do with property values. I took those out. I think it's about an extra $1 million or so that we got in from assessed values going up, but we still have about $20.4 million of new tax dollars on top of that. So I didn't even include that. And the last one that you mentioned about the recommendation of the tax rate by the state, I disagree with that characterization. It's not a recommendation at all. It's a cap. The state comes in. A lot of states don't do that. A lot of states say tax whatever you want. Our state is more conservative and says you can't raise taxes faster than wages are growing. So if wages go up by 4.3%, you're allowed to raise the tax rate by 4.3%. And so it's not a recommendation in any way, it's a cap. And they said 4.3, we just approved a 20% increase from last year. So they're gonna cut that because they're not even gonna let us do that. So I agree with the things you're saying, but they're kind of like shooting bullets at a train. It's not, they're not the real issue.
Any further matters that the council wants to address?
I'm still going to remain silent even though I disagree on several of those points. As I have the last few years. Still like you. Don't love you. Love Dennis.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Fred?
Second.
Dennis? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.